I've been praying for y'all so much this week, and let's get started. Stand up wherever you are. Don't stand up in your car. Don't do that. Please keep driving if you're listening. But come on, let's join together and let's sing. The highest King would welcome me. I was lost, but He brought me in. Oh, His love for me. Oh, His love for me. Who the sun sets free. Oh, it's free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am.
Let's sing free at last. Free at last, He has ransomed me. His grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, He died for me.
The sun sets free. Oh, it's free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes,
I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am.
I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. The sun sets free. Oh, it's free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am.
In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my
Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God.
yes, I am. Come on, let's sing this out. We're no longer slaves to our fear. You unravel me. I'm sorry, guys. So have a little grace with us this morning. Satan is he's been really attacking. And really attacking the church in general. So we're going to start this over. And it's going to be okay. God, we just praise your name right now. Lord, we just love you so much. These weapons were formed today, but they won't prosper. You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears have gone. And I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Love has called my name. I've been born again to your family. Your blood flows through my veins. Sing it out. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child. Declare it right now. I'm no longer a slave to fear. Come on, sing it. I am a child of God. Declare it one more time. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I am surrounded by the arms of the Father. I am surrounded by songs of deliverance. We've been liberated from our bondage. We're the sons and the daughters. Let us sing our freedom. Oh, oh, you split the sea so I could walk right through it. You drowned my fears in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and sing. I am a child. Let's sing that one more time. You split the sea. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. You drowned my fears in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and sing. I am a child of God. Let's just declare that. I am a child of God. Oh, I am a child of God. Nothing can bring us down because we are children of God. Oh, I am a child of God. So let's sing this. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God.
You know, as Reed was saying, the enemies have been attacking us this morning. We've had technical problems, we've had some issues, and it's just like the enemy to try to come in and just bring confusion and distraction and get the focus off of, cause us to get the focus off of the one that is truly about, and maybe on our problems in the moment. And I feel like that's kind of a statement of where we've been, maybe even as a nation. so focused on the distractions and the attacks of the enemy that we forget that there's a mighty, powerful God who is for us. He's not up there saying, good luck, you're on your own. But he's right in the middle of this fight and this battle with us. Because he's a good Father. You know, I was reading today one of the scriptures from the United 714 prayer. And I'm going to share it with you in Hebrews. It says, it's through him then let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God. That is the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. And no matter how we feel like today has gone for us in the room, and no matter how it's been for you today, our hearts have been set on honoring him and bringing his name glory and praise. And so I feel like that's what we've done here today. I want to just say happy Mother's Day to all the mothers that are out there. We try to connect with people. We see the names up here on our Facebook, but there's no way I'm going to start calling mothers out. I know that all of you guys that are watching it, hopefully you've already told your mother Happy Mother's Day. If not, make sure that is the one thing that you do today. If you don't do anything else, Happy Mother's Day to your mom. Happy Mother's Day to all you mothers that are out there, all you soon-to-be mothers, all you who want to be mothers. God's put it in your heart. Happy Mother's Day to you. We love you. Guess what? We can't wait to see you, and we're excited about that. Next Sunday, we are fired up. Next Sunday, you're going to get to actually walk through the doors of this building and sit in this room with us to be a part of what's going on in the room. You'll be able to experience the live experience that we've had each and every week, even though you haven't been here. We are excited about that. I think we got some people dancing on the stage up in here right now, but we are excited about that. We cannot wait to see you. We'll be kind of giving you some instructions on how we're going to do social distancing. But if you're worried about being here, if you're got a compromised immune system, that's fine. This online service will still be streaming. But for all of those of you who can be in the room, we are beyond excited to see you face to face next Sunday at 10 o'clock. It'll be a family style service. You've seen that on Facebook. We'll have your kids. Don't be afraid to let your kids bring something to do. As long as, look, phone, iPad, turn the volume down, turn it off where we can't hear it. We're okay with it. Do whatever you need to do to be in the room next week. We cannot wait to see you. We're excited about that. So we can't wait to see you. Hey, I wanted to pray this Unite 714 prayer with you. Just want to remind you to be praying this and be united with the millions of people all over the world that are praying this prayer at least twice a day, at 7:14 in the morning, 7:14 in the afternoon. And so I've tried to bring this up. I just want you to be aware of it. Unite714.com, you can see it. So I'm going to pray this prayer for us, over us, with all of you guys who are there. If you want to look it up, it's Unite 714. And I'm just going to pray this prayer as we move on in the service. And so, living God, we humbly come before you in confidence, knowing you are a merciful and loving Father who hears our prayers from heaven. And we unite before you as the church, a spiritual house of living stones, a holy priesthood. Lord, in the midst of this pandemic, we bring you our sacrifice of praise. We thank you for your mitigating the effects of COVID-19. We realize that without your divine intervention and protection, the devastation wrought by this disease would be far greater. We are thankful today that what is impossible with man is possible with you. Lord, today we choose to praise you. In the face of pressure, panic, and pain, we choose to look beyond our circumstances and lift our hands to you. Comfort us in our weakness. Lift us up into your presence as we worship your holy name. Lord, today we choose to praise you. Your church unites to lift up sacrifices of praise. We are confident our world will experience a fresh outpouring of your divine presence and love. This will result in the conversion of untold millions. You and you alone are worthy of our honor and our worship. Lord, today we choose to praise you. We pray this prayer, God, in the mighty name of Jesus, the name that is above every name. God, this is all about bringing you honor and glory. So God, we honor you. God, we honor you today. Father, I thank you. God, I thank you that lives are going to be changed. Hearts are going to be changed. Lord, that you're going to show yourself strong on our behalf. God, we honor you and we give you the praise. In Jesus' name, amen. Make that a habit to pray that prayer. There's a new prayer every week. Pray that prayer with us. Just be in prayer for the churches, for the communities, for the sick, for those that are out having to work, even when they're in places that feel compromised. Just be in prayer. I know that I talked to a friend this week, and he's been in touch with people in Uganda. And even in Uganda, people are starving to death because of the way that things have been leveraged against them during this pandemic. There are people all over the world that need our prayers. So I just encourage you, don't just pray for you and yours. It's not just me and mine, but it's the whole world that needs to experience the power and the presence and the hope that only Jesus can bring. So I encourage you, be in prayer about that. Again, we can't wait to see you next week in person in this room. But for now, I want you to just watch this video, and we'll be back with you in just a minute. Amen.
There are those who say that this is ordinary, but don't let that fool you. Mother will always be the bravest, least ordinary, most difficult, utterly challenging career that anyone ever hopes to lay claim to. While others might hear diaper changer, food maker, laundry doer, carpooler, bottle washer, sweatpants wearer, life on hold, wanna be doing anything else, woman. The truth is, whether it feels like it some days or not, you are in fact a shelter from the storm. You are a cape of good hope. You are a warrior who will do battle for your children's hearts, souls, attention, innocence, education, and memories. Go to battle, my friends. This is your time. We will hold strong on either side of you. We will pray for those bottles through the dark watches of the night. And when doubt comes and children break, when adults fail them, and when they push and push as hard against us as the day we delivered them into this world, we will not be broken. We may ache and see cracks tear through our hearts, but we will get up again tomorrow, and we will load the clothes and the words that need to be said again and again and again. And when the world tries to claw at them, to break them, to smash the beauty in them, may our walls hold true. May the lessons we've told, the truths we've lived, the life we've spoken into them come back easily, predictably, with wash and repeat ease. Kingdom business, Jesus work, this shaping of souls, this raising tiny humans. There are those that say this is ordinary. Don't buy it for a second. Mighty. You are mighty because you, Mother.
Well, what's up, everybody? Hey, thanks for joining us. I'm watching you guys. I got my phone out. And man, if you want to throw in some thumbs up, I like the hearts. The more hearts you put in, the louder I preach. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. If you're there watching, man, thank you so much for joining us. Man, today's Mother's Day, and I'm so thankful for my mom and all the moms that are here. I have a good friend, Ricardo. He's not a mother. He's a man. He's got big arms. And Ricardo, I met Ricardo last year, and Ricardo has an amazing wife, but he's pretty amazing. I got a man crush on Ricardo. Ricardo's Spanish, okay? I went to Ricardo's house last year, and I saw Ricardo's garden. Now, this ain't no joke for a garden. If you're looking at this picture right here, for those you can't see it, he's got thousands of ears of corn, hundreds of tomato plants, hundreds of squash plants, hundreds of zucchinis. He's got everything. I look at his garden, and I say, Ricardo, you know, where's your tractor? He goes, Mateo, these mucho gringos, mucho lazy. This is my best Spanish accent. He said, mucho lazy. I said, where's your tractor? You know, you got all these furrows. He goes, he points at his bicep. He goes, tractor number uno, tractor number dos. And in that moment, I was like, dude, I failed as a human. This dude's 65. And he is killing it, okay? But in this moment, I went to his house last year, and it inspired me, right? My heart was transformed. Because here's the thing, write this down, type this in the chat. Vision transforms hearts. Vision transforms heart. Now, if he would have told me all of the rules, if he would have told me all of the work before I ever got a picture of what it could look like, you know what? I wouldn't have been excited about that. And it's the same is true with my kids. My daughter Phoebe, she's super into gymnastics. I don't know about you guys. My kids love gymnastics. But here's what I did. I didn't start with all the rules, right? I didn't start with, okay, you need to work on this, you need to work on that. No, the first thing I did is I put on So You Think You Can Dance. Right? I took her to I put on dance shows, I put on gymnastic shows, and here's what happened. She got a picture, she got motivated by a vision, she got motivated by what was possible, and then watch this, it made her want to practice, it made her want to do 27,000 front flips in my living room when I'm trying to eat dinner. Like, she wanted to work on all of this stuff. And it's the same thing for you moms out there. I mean, you talk about 9 months of labor. Talk about 9 months of not feeling super pretty, even though you're glowing if you're pregnant. You are glowing, you are beautiful. But I know the pain with 4 kids and the pain my wife went through. Who goes through 9 months of pain? Somebody that has a vision. Somebody that's motivated about a vision, a picture of their family. And so not only is it true with mothers, not only is it true with Ricardo and my daughter, but watch this. It's true with church, and it's true with Christianity. You don't motivate people with rules. Some of you grow up with all the rules. You knew all the rules, right? You knew you had to get baptized. You knew you had to tithe, and you had to serve, and you had to forgive, and you had to do all these things in church. But listen to me, rules don't motivate anybody. Because here's what happens. When you start with rules, Christianity becomes a have to and not a want to. My daughter, Phoebe, wants to practice all of those gymnastics. It's not work to her. It's not a have to. It's a want to. And the reason I bring that up today is because this is the context of what James is saying. We were there last week, and I'm going to go right back to where we left off in verse 16. If you have your Bible, man, feel free to comment. James chapter 1, verse 16. I'd encourage you to pull out your Bible and follow along. And I just want to show you what James is talking about. He is literally saying the same thing. And here's what he says, verse 16. He says, don't be deceived. Okay? Don't be deceived, my beloved brethren. Every good thing and every perfect gift is from God, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shifting shadow. Now watch this. This is where he gets off. He says, in the exercise of his free will, that's Jesus, Jesus' free will, he chose you. Listen, if you're under the sound of my voice, I want you to listen to me. God chose you long before you ever were created. He chose you with all your hurts and all your hangups and all your problems. Watch this. He chose you in his own free will, read all the fine print of all the times you would fail, mess up in your Christianity, mess up in your performances. He knew all about those things. He says, my strength is made powerful in your weakness. I brought you forth by the word of truth. So watch this. So you could be the first fruits among his creatures. Now I got a garden. When you start to see first fruits, man, you get excited. That is the first fruit. I also think about first fruiting being the oldest kid. Like my brother is the oldest. Now watch this. My brother, in an ideal world, my oldest brother would be the example. Now watch. Do you know that God has called you with all your hurts and all your failures and all your problems to be an example among all others? Do you realize that God has picked you? This is not an act of stupidity, because if you're like me, you know what a bad husband you can be because you didn't think of the Mother's Day gift until it was too late, or maybe you're right now you didn't even think of something and you're trying to think of something. Listen, I know if you're like me, you don't have it all together, friend. And this is what James is saying. God doesn't care how good you are. His goodness isn't based on you. It's based upon him. And so he says, you are called to be the first fruits. You are chosen. You are picked. Listen to me. God has forgiven the entire world already. He has forgiven you for every sin that you could ever commit. And here's what it does. It makes you realize, gives you a picture that God has called you his son, his daughter. Nothing can change that. Now watch this. Now James is going to he's going to give some instructions. And the reason I said all that, don't miss this, it's not about do these things that James is about to say. It's about this is what Christians do, not do these things to be a Christian. Listen to me. A lot of people read the book of James and they think, oh, I'm going to do all these things and I'm going to become a Christian. No. It starts with your identity. It starts with who you are. It starts with the picture that God has called you and your family to be first fruits. And here's what it does. It motivates you because vision transforms your heart. Vision makes you want to do this thing called Christianity. So James is writing to a group of Christians who aren't bearing good fruit. And this is what he's going to say right here. He says, this you know, next verse, my beloved brethren. Watch this. James is not going to tell you something that you don't already know, and neither am I. James is simply going to bring a reminder to you, and I'm going to do the same thing to you. What is James reminding this church of? Because this church they hear their sermon on Sunday, but their lives don't change. This church has got real problems, and if you're like me, this is not just written to the church back then, but this is written to us. And so this is what he's going to say. This you know already. What do we know already? This, James is saying, is an echo of what Jesus had already said. The book of James is simply a response to what Jesus already said in Matthew chapter 7 in the Sermon on the Mount. So what did Jesus say on the Sermon on the Mount? Because Jesus' half-brother is the gangster version. He just goes straight to the point. And he reminds them, lest you know. Well, what is it we know? Watch this. Matthew chapter 7, verse 17. Every good tree bears good fruit. Every bad tree bears bad fruit. Same fruit. He's talking about the same thing. Now watch this. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then they know them by their fruits. Okay, so there's some fruits. Now watch this. He says, everyone, this is Jesus, everyone who hears these words of mine and doesn't act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house upon the sand. And you know how that story goes. Now watch what James is going to say. He says, this you know, you've heard it said. You already heard it said. What is James going to tell us? Everyone, here we go, be quick to hear and slow to speak and slow to anger. Are you quick to speak? I don't know about you, but I am. Like my first response is to go on Facebook. My first response is to respond. And what James is saying here is this is how Christians should act. This is good fruit. And the reality is he's saying everybody ought to be quick to hear and slow to speak and slow to anger. Why does he include anger? Here's why. Because you can't listen when you're angry. This word anger is not just talking about 3-year-old fits, although let's not pretend as adults we don't have 3-year-old fits. But this word anger is a deep resentment. Can I tell you that some of you, I know for a fact that you have this deep resentment towards our government, towards church, towards pastors, probably some of you even towards your spouse. You've got this deep resentment towards somebody, and what James is saying, he's going to link anger with speaking and hearing, because listen to me, you can't listen to the things that God would say through other people and through himself when you're angry. When is the last time you listened when you were mad? When was the last time you were actually, oh, what can I learn while you're absolutely PO'd? And James is saying, realize this you know that good gifts, good fruit is those that listen. Listening is an act of love. Listening says you care more about that other person than you care about yourself. And James is telling these Christians, you might want to rethink this title called Christian, because if you care more about what you have to say than what other people have to say, you might not be a Christian. And watch this. He goes, for the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. Therefore, put it all aside. Take it off. He says, be a doer of the word and not merely a hearer. Well, what's the doing he's talking about? He's talking about doing and not just hearing. What is the doing? Here's the doing. Ready? Verse 26. If anyone thinks himself to be religious, watch this, yet does not bridle his tongue. He's not talking about cuss words, although I suggest you don't just go, reel out all your cuss words. But he's talking about whether or not you can shut your mouth and listen. Here's why. The moment someone feels heard is the moment they feel. Let me go back. The moment someone feels heard is the moment they are healed. You might want to type that in the chat. James realizes that the most important thing for Christians, real Christians, to do right now, especially during all that's going on, is to be heart healers. He says, shut your mouth, Matt, and listen to the hearts of other people's, because your tongue may deceive you. And he says, listen, if you don't bridle your tongue, if you're not a listener, if you don't really care what people have to say, your religion is worthless. Now watch this. He says, pure and undefiled religion in the sight of God is what? To visit orphans and widows in their distress. Now that is literal, but you know what it also means? Caring about other people, loving your neighbor. And then he goes, keep oneself unstained by the world. What does that mean? That means caring more about God and about people than you care for yourself. Here's why. How you listen to other people is a reflection on how you listen to the Lord. You might want to type that in the chat. And here's the other side. How you listen to the Lord is a reflection of how you listen to other people. Here's the thing. Your default is not to listen. I'm just going to be honest with you. I asked my wife if I was a good listener. Rate me 1 out of 10. You know what she said? 4. She said, you don't listen. And I'm like, you're right. And I thought, well, maybe my wife's being hard on me. I asked my small group to rate me. You know what they gave me? 4. Or a 5. And they were being generous. The reality is, listening is not something you're born with. Here's the thing. If you don't listen to people, there's a great chance you don't listen to the Lord. And I tell you that because in humiliation, Christians ought to be more concerned with other people than themselves. I asked my daughter, if you want to find out if you're a listener, if you really want to find out if you care about your kids, ask your kids this question. I asked my daughter, Phoebe, I said, Phoebe, am I a good listener? She goes, no, Daddy. She goes, Daddy, we listen to you all the time. You never listen to us. That'll mess you up. And in that moment when she told me that, it was like the Lord telling me that. It was like God says, Matt, I listen to you rabble and ramble all the time. But you never listen to me. Now, you listen to me when you're in trouble, right? We're really good at listening to other people when we're in trouble. We come to church and listen to the preacher when our lives are a mess, but let everything go be right and fine and dandy, and then we stop listening. We listen to the banker when our finances are in trouble. We listen to our parents when we're in trouble. But could it be that God has given you problems, and James here is talking about trials and tribulations? Could it be that God has been trying to speak to you, but you're so angry and you have this deep discontentment? You've got this problem, you've got this anger, and God's saying, I'm trying to get your attention with problems, because the only time that you'll listen to me when there's a problem in your finances, the only time that you'll listen to me is when you lose your job. The only time that you'll listen to me is when I give you problems. And I love what C.S. Lewis says. He says, God whispers in our pleasures. Have you ever noticed that sometimes God is silent? Well, maybe it's because you're in this place of pleasures. But he says he speaks in our conscience, but he shouts in our pain. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. And some of you can't hear God. You've gone through pain, but you can't hear him because you're angry at him. I talk to people all the time that are mad at God. And here's what happens. When you have anger, it's like an earwax, and it stops you from hearing what God would have to say to you. This is not our default to care more about other people than ourselves. Think about the best listener that you know. Who is the best listener that you know? They're probably the most loving person that you know, because listening is an act of love. Listening lets you know that that person cares more about you than they care about the sound of their own voice. Listen to me. Here's what I have found in self-discovery. Great talkers are rarely great listeners. And it breaks my heart. Because some of us, we're great talkers, but we won't listen to others. And James is saying the mark of Christianity is someone who listens to other people, even though they're wrong, even though they're a Democrat, even though they're Republican, even though they're black, even though they're white, even though they're rich or they're poor, or they're Christian or not. They value their opinion more than they value their own. Think about this. Jesus himself listens to every prayer you would pray, even though he can finish your sentence. Jesus listens to every stupid prayer I would pray, every dumb prayer, every time I'm whining like, oh, my life stinks. He listens to all of it, and he knows what I'm going to say before I'm saying it. Yet he sits on the edge of his throne, as the Bible says in Psalms, hand cupped behind his ear, listening for your prayers, even though he can finish your sentence. If I can finish your sentence, most of the time I'm cutting you off. Every time I do that. And you know what's amazing about God? He never does that. Are you a good listener? Because how you listen to other people is a picture of how you listen to the Lord. And hear me, some of us have this default. When we have more experience, if we're a mom, if we're a homeschooler, if we're a pastor, if we're a musician, we have more experience. Someone comes to us, and you know what we do? Our first response is not to help them. Our first response is to give advice. Our first response is to give counsel, is judgment. And James is saying, listen, shut your mouth, bridle your tongue. The most important thing is not advice. The most important thing, because 90% of the things that people will tell you, they're not looking for advice. I know this because the more you do this, the more they be quiet. In my marriage, I have found that when my wife comes to me and I immediately give her advice, try that. She stopped telling me what to do. Why won't you just listen? And this is what happens in 90% of our relationships. People are just looking for us. The inexperienced person is coming to us just wanting to vent, just wanting to talk, and we automatically give them wisdom, advice, and judgment. Here's the thing. When we do that, it shows exactly who we are, whether we're Christian or not. That's the big deal with listening. James says you call yourself a Christian, but you don't care about other people's voice more than you care about your own. He says, are you a doer of the word? Are you going to be slow to speak? Or are you going to be quick to listen? And here's the thing. I'm not speaking to you from some ivory tower like I got this figured out. Trust me. if I were to rate myself, I would rate myself lower. But here's the thing. If you're going through the book of James, it's not about perfection, but it is about the process. And so I'm asking you to consider this question. Are you listening for what God is saying? Are you a good listener? Do you value your voice more than you value the other people's voice? If there is a moment, if there is a thought that goes through your head that thinks that you're more important than they are, you have it right. Your God has called you to be a talker, not a listener. If you do 90% of the talking in your relationships, I'm asking you, I'm begging you to be a doer of the word, to consider yourself possibly a Christian. You might want to rethink this, because the church is really good at talking and telling you what you should and shouldn't do. But what if we were known for being good listeners? Maybe people might be a little bit more free to admit they struggle with suicide. Maybe people might be more free to admit they struggle with pornography. Maybe people might be a little bit more free to struggle, to realize, to let people know that they struggle with a food addiction. Could it be that we've been known as a church, we've been known as a global church that cares more about what we have to say in our preaching than we care about what people have to say? Because here's the thing, the moment people feel heard is the moment they feel healed. And God hasn't called us to correct people's behavior. That's the dumbest thing in the world. Try to correct the behavior of a pig. You can put lipstick on a pig, you can change the pig. It's not going to change the pig. The only thing that's going to change somebody, the only thing that's going to motivate somebody is to get at their heart. And the way you do that is through listening. You never learn anything through talking, but only through listening. It's been said that no one is as deaf as someone who won't listen. So here's the question. Is there enough evidence to convict you of being a Christian based on the fact that you listen to other people more than you talk to them? Is there enough evidence to convict you if you told your friends, if you asked your friends, if you asked your spouse, am I a good listener? And they said no, that might be an area where God is trying to tell you that maybe you care more about you and what you have to say than what God has to say through other people through you. And I've been struggling with this all week. Because my mom, on Mother's Day, is one of the best listeners that I know. You think about women and how they listen. My wife listens to every sermon I preach. And my heart breaks when you look into a mirror, as James says, and you see something that you haven't seen before. So here's my question. As we prepare to close, I want to invite our worship team to come forward, and I want to ask you, are you bearing the fruit of a Christian? If you're not, when I talk about fruit, good fruit, the fact that you're a listener, that you care more about what God has to say than what you have to say, I want to help you, because here's the thing. James is going to give us some advice, and I want to help you. Okay? You want to develop this fruit in your life? You want to ask God to come into your life as the gardener and pull out the weeds? I want to help you. If the answer is no, I don't want to do this, then maybe you're not a Christian, and that's okay. You need to start with being honest. You need to start with being honest. God has a picture for your life. But you also need to be realizing that God, if you are a Christian, go ahead and hit that pad, Michael. If you are a Christian and you're not doing these things, then you might want to rethink this thing called Christianity. But if you're in this place and you're realizing that you're a wretch like me, that you care more about what you have to say than what other people have to say, I want to give you some tips. And here they are. Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead and play that chorus for me. Number one, count others more significant than yourself. The others is Democrats, Republicans, Christians, non-Christians. Do you count other people more important than you are, even though you're more experienced than they are? Philippians 2:3. Do nothing, not even do good things. Do nothing. Somebody ought to type, do nothing. Do nothing. from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Count what they have to say, no matter if it's right or wrong, more important than what you have to say. I'm going to say that again. Care more about what they have to say than what you have to say, because right here, Proverbs is telling us that they're more important. That a Christian realizes that other people, right or wrong, are more important than they are. Jesus does this himself. So number one, count others people more important than yourself. Number two, ask questions. Check this out. Proverbs says, "It is the fool who takes no pleasure in understanding, but only expresses his opinion." Do you care about what other people's opinions are, or are you just really good at telling everybody what your opinion is? He says, the fool gives an answer before he even hears the person out. And watch what he says. The purpose of a man's heart is like deep water, but a man or woman of understanding draws it out. In the world of education, the word educate means to draw out. I could have sworn when I went to school they were cramming it in. When someone speaks to you, start to ask questions. And I want to give you the greatest piece of advice, okay, that will heal any marriage, any relationship. You want to write this down, you want to pay attention, you want to tweet this. Okay, this is the greatest question you can ask. I've been doing it all week, it's been saving my life. Anytime someone talks to you, ask this question. Do you want me to feel it, or do you want me to fix it? Do you want me to feel what you're saying, or do you want me to fix it? I promise you, you use that. And 90% of the time, people are not looking for you to fix it. They're simply looking for someone to feel it. Number three, shut your mouth. Now, I need people to say this to me, okay? Sometimes they got to be real deliberate. Shut your mouth. Dietrich Bonhoeffer says it like this: there will be days when the most important ministry we can do is square our shoulders to some hurting person, uncross our arms, get rid of the one eyebrow, lean forward, make eye contact, and hear their pain all the way to the bottom. You know why we need to shut up? Because the word listen has the same letters as the word silent. Because you can't hear what they're saying as long as you're formulating an opinion, and you can't hear what God is saying as long as you're talking. If you're wondering why God is silent in this moment of your life, it's because you got to close your mouth. There's a story of Job. In Job chapter 2, Job lost everything. Watch this. This is what Job's friends do. They show up, they sit on the ground for 7 days and 7 nights, and watch this. 7 days, Job's friends said not a single word to him. That's what small groups are for. That's what it ought to look like in your marriage. Just sit there and peel their heart. So count others more than yourself. Ask good questions. Shut your mouth. Because you've been given 2 ears and 1 mouth, which means we ought to listen twice as much as we talk. In just a minute, we're going to do that. I'm going to shut my mouth. And we're going to hear more what God has to say than possibly what we have to say. But I want to give you one more tip, okay? Last one is this. In times of trial, remember that listening is more important than talking, than giving your opinion on COVID, than giving your opinion on the government and the conspiracy, than giving your opinion on what other people should do. Listening is more important than talking. Why, Matt? Why is listening more important than talking? Here's why. In times of trial, we cannot not hear the words of God in our anger. And the reality is, if we listen with the ears of God, if you and I would listen with the ears of God, we could speak the word of God. Right now in this place, God, I pray that you would speak to every heart, that we would close our mouth and we would ask you this question: what is it you want to say to me? God, what do you want to say to my country? What do you want to say to my employees, to my kids? Here we are, God, we're listening. So right now in this place, we say, God, we care more about what you have to say than what we have to say. We make a tribute to close our mouths. Though we speak in multiple languages, we close our mouths to hear the voice of the one who speaks to our heart. God, in this place, speak to every heart. Speak to my heart about my future, about my kids, about my life. We're going to sing this place. We're going to sing one more time. But I want you to open your ear to heaven and hear God speaking into your heart.
I'm a child of God. Sing this out. I'm no longer slave. I'm no longer enslaved to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer enslaved to fear. I am a child of God.
Here's the thing. Good listeners make good spouses. Good listeners make good preachers. Good listeners make good presidents. Good listeners make good kids. Good listeners make good bosses. God has called you to hear because it demonstrates that you and I care more about others and considers others more important than ourselves. There was a great tribute given to a great linguist who could be silent in 7 different languages. And may that be our prayer. May God convict us of maybe some areas where you and I have been more vocal in our anger than we have been. We've considered our voice more important than God's voice. So I want to ask you some questions. I've got them on the screen for you. Number 1, is Christianity a have to or a want to? Do you want to do this? Do you want to change your life? Do you want to be a doer of the word? If you don't, you may want to reconsider that term Christian. Number 2, what is God wanting to weed out of your garden? I don't know about you, but God has given me a picture for my life. He has so much potential, and I want to have the best fruit in my life. You know, some of us have some rotten fruit. Some of us have some molded fruit, and nobody wants anything to do with our lives. Nobody wants anything to do with our Christianity and our church, possibly because we've gotten some rotten fruit. Maybe there's some weeds that need to be pulled out of your relationship. How do you love? Because here's what I found. My garden is getting high. I'm starting to see some real fruit. And you know how attractive good fruit is? When I pulled up on Ricardo's place, it was attractive. And God has called you and I to be people that are attractive to the world because we care so much about them that we hear what they'd have to say, even if they're dead wrong, because Jesus does the same for you, friend. When we're dead wrong, he still hears us every time. Third question is this: is there a chance that you're deceived about the fact that you care and love other people's voices and God's voice as much as you think you do? Is there a chance that you're deceived? Is there a chance, this is what he's saying, don't be deceived. God has called you, but also don't be deceived in this idea that you're a Christian, but you don't listen to the things that God would say to you. I don't know what God is saying to you right now, which is why in just a second I want to take a moment. And I want you to ask that question. What are you saying to me? This is the last question. You guys can be playing. In your anger, what does God want to say to you? So close your eyes. I want everybody in this room, everybody there at home, just close your eyes, and I want to do something. I want you to just close your eyes. I want to ask you this question. Ask this question of God right there in your own heart. Just ask this question. God, what do you want to say to me? Because the last thing that God is when his kids are hurting is silent. And the thoughts that start to go through your mind, Proverbs says, as you commit your way to the Lord, God will cause your thoughts to already be agreeable with his will. You don't think, oh, that was just a nice thought. No, you're asking God to speak to you. When the thought comes through your head, that's God speaking to you. So we're going to take a minute. And I just want God to speak to you so bad. Now, you get a word by getting in a word. You get a word by getting in the word. But ask this question. God, what are you trying to say to me? Close your eyes. Everybody in this room, just do the same thing. God, what are you trying to say to me? I'm going to shut up. God, what are you trying to say to me? You can do that, a little experiment anytime you want to. But you know what God spoke to me? While I was sitting here, you know what I felt like? It's not like I heard a voice, okay? I'm not crazy. I do think it's funny how we call people crazy when God speaks to them, but when we speak to God, it's called prayer. I don't know why that. But you know what I just felt like? I felt like God was telling me to tell you guys thank you. To tell my church thank you. To tell all of you that are watching right now, thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for hearing the messages. Thank you for listening to your spouse. Mothers, thank you so much. Some of you right now, you're listening to the voice of God. Some of you are listening to me, and I just want to say thank you. Come on, let's just sing this blessing, this chorus. Come on, let God speak to you. We sing the Lord bless you. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you. Be gracious to you. Lord, turn his face toward you and give you Yeah, that's our prayer for you. Lord, bless you and keep you and make his face shine upon you. Give you peace. Lord, turn his face toward you and keep you. And I'm so excited about next week. Next week we've got we've been looking forward to it. I know our team has been looking forward to it. But I also want to say thank you not only for listening, but I want to say thank you to so many of you that are giving and supporting what God has done in our church. And we're a little unorthodox. I'm a little unorthodox, maybe a little weird. But you know what? At No Limit Church, we are seeing people's lives being changed. There truly is no limit to the things that God has done in our church. Because God is moving where people find people that love others and care for others. And I want to thank you so much, not just for listening, but also for giving. I want to thank you for giving. If you're wanting to give, I would encourage you to text any amount to 84321. 84321. You can text any amount right now. But we're so thankful for you guys. We're so thankful for a church that cares about people, that listens. My prayer is that the rest of this week you would say this. Do you want me to feel it or fix it, God? Do you want me to feel or fix my wife? Do you want me to feel or fix it? God, I thank you for all that you're doing. I thank you for every person giving. I think that you will see or reap, you will harvest. That which is sown will be reaped. Father, for those that have been listening and hearing the problems, God, I thank you for their love. For those that are changing right now, God, I thank you for all that you're doing. I thank you for every heart and every family and every child and every business and every worker and every medical person in this place that's help get us through this. Thank you for No Limit Church and the people of Alabama and all the churches that have demonstrated what listening looks like, that they care more about a government than they care about their own selves. God, I thank you for that kind of selfless love that's found in this place. Thank you for every selfless heart. Thank you for every mother that shows us what it looks like to lay that life down and care more about their kids. God, I thank you. I thank you for a mom in my life who listened to me. Come on, let's sing it one more time. Lord bless you. Lord bless you. May His face shine upon you. Be gracious to you. Lord, turn His face toward you and give you peace. Thanks for joining us. We can't wait to see you next week. Have a great week.